Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast of Along the Watchtower. It is I, Ellen Walker, your host. It's been a little while. I believe my last show was on the 4th. I had to take a brief reprieve from all of it. There's just a lot of things going on in my personal life. And just trying to take on a bunch of new tasks simultaneously, blah, blah, blah. You've heard it all before. Everybody's got their thing going on. However, I do really appreciate you sticking around, the two of you listening and the one person watching. Thanks. With that being said, there's been a lot of news. I know I never got to the Dr. Seuss thing, and that's because it's ridiculous. A lot of what's happening, a lot of what's been going on in terms of like cancel culture. I'm trying to adjust the camera here. In terms of what's been happening with cancel culture while simultaneously what's been going on the Hill and all of the political maneuvering that's been happening and the avoidance that, and again, it's the interesting thing where there are lots of things happening. The expansion of the Middle East campaign, we'll say, because it's happening in multiple countries simultaneously. The absolution of Posse Comitatus and the occupation, really, of D.C. by 2,500 National Guardsmen for no reason. You know, we had these multiple reasonings. You know, first the inauguration, then the impeachment trial, then there's a QAnon threat, and none of that materialized, and there was never any evidence that any of this was happening, except for the Capitol riot, right? But we've read about the conflict. Everyone's finger pointing. The sergeant at arms says, well, they denied me backup when I tried to retrieve it or tried to request it. When I actually requested it, we know that they had 268 National Guardsmen that were activated that weren't used. The National Guardsmen that were there were told that they could only do traffic duty and not to interact with any protesters unless directly confronted. They were disarmed. Like the list goes on in the sort of handicapping that was done prior to the situation here. And for me, I would, as a prosecutor, I would have sought out because again, the buck stopped with Trump as far as security preparations for that day. So as a prosecutor, I would have sought out any sort of logistical information regarding Trump's involvement in basically having the National Guard stand down. But I digress, because there are multiple things that have been happening in the Biden administration that is really receiving no press. And this camera's really bothering me. Hold on. I just wanted to make sure it was right because it is bothering me. But anyway, so the news, right? Because we've read reports, articles covering different polls. Mainstream media is at an all-time low again, just like it was back before the Trump administration, back before it had its lightning rod that it could constantly go to for ratings. It was clickbait. Whole administration was just clickbait. It was just straight clickbait, and just grifters abound, and everyone. Project to Fox News as a whole has taken a hit because people are noticing, and it's not even noticing, people are again acknowledging the illegitimacy of these so-called news organizations, and so yes, that's been happening. And just by the way, on the Dr. Seuss note, you know what's interesting about Dr. Seuss? They're only talking about the latter half of the story. Did you know that he openly acknowledged his racist and bigoted past, and part of his books, the nature of inclusion and how strange creatures can interact with each other and groups can coalesce and come together despite their differences and disagreements, and even someone as cold and as empty-hearted as the Grinch can even become empathetic again, was supposed to be emblematic of his journey from being a cold, heartless, bigoted person. Not even a person. That's not a person. That's a person embraces diversity, differences, understands that as a human being we can be anything we want to be, and part of the awesome nature of that gift is going and seeing and reflecting upon other people and incorporating that into yourself. And so that was part of his journey. And there's like a museum there, not there, but there's a museum that's dedicated to that and explains it. And there's it has some of his racist paintings and stuff like blackface and red lips, all the whole thing. And yeah, but so they're only talking about half the story. But anyway, off the Dr. Seuss thing, just wanted to touch on that. But yeah, there's weird stuff going on, like the Pentagon having a stand down and having all branches and all members of the military retake the oath. It's just very interesting. 3-month-old babies are racist, says Arizona Department of Education. So just weird stuff. Stuff that just like, I don't want to say doesn't matter, because it does, but it it kind of doesn't matter. It's what it is. It's emblematic. It is part of the zeitgeist. It paints a picture. For example, all right. For example, the Grammys with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, right? 15 years ago would have seemed like a parody. Now here's the thing. Don't get me wrong. I love WAP. WAP's a jam. I love dancing to WAP. I love it. Get my slide going. Get my dance. I love it. Love to dance. But, and here's the thing for me, the Grammys as a whole has always been an oligarchical club to which most people generally got into said club by being of a certain stature, by singing in a certain genre of music. It's a very biased culture. All awards culture is hyper biased. It's like the New York Times bestseller list. It's based off of profit generated from the amount of books sold rather than the actual nature or what's the word I'm looking for, actual content of the book. And that has to do with like the High Republic and Star Wars and all that. But I'm not going to get it. That's another channel. That's my comic book channel. Greetings, True Believer. Going to start updating that soon. That's my self-plug. Anyway, but so what's happening for me at least is that we're seeing the culture devolve. Okay? Again, don't get me wrong. I love the song, and I understand that the Grammys as a whole is a club that one, is ushered into through popularity, not through actual artistry. They basically went on stage and had they basically just like twerking on the Grammys, and it's like 15 years ago. It would have sounded hilarious. That would have sounded antithetical. Now, on one end, some in their head was like, well, see, that's the Grammys becoming more open and stuff. But it's like, wait a minute. Is WAP a song that needs to be credited for having artistic depth and having a wide-ranging musicianship, or is it a good song, like a good club song? Like, it's a good song, but it is things. This is what I'm talking about value, right? People the value the things that they value. Like as a whole, as a society, a collective amount of us have to give validity to something in order for it to have value in our society, right? So enough people collectively gave value to the idea of black people being people, surprise, and then all of a sudden there's political motivation behind it to make it law. Gee golly, okay? You have enough people coming to the understanding that homosexuality not only is a thing, but it's been around for thousands of years. Fucking, where you been? Okay, read the Romans, the Greeks. That's just the standard go-to. It's been around all over the world for a long time, buddy. So non-discrimination law should probably include them. So there's political motivation behind it, and it happens. So when enough of society collectively supports, or first it's an acknowledgement, then it's a sort of correction of perspective, then they garner support. That leads to political motivation and thus legal change. So this is what's happening, and on one end, like I kind of went off on a tangent for what I was talking about, but on one end, it is fascinating to see, and it is emboldening to be alive during a time such as this. On the other hand, you're seeing that will and that motivation, that political capital being wielded, I feel like, by parties who do not have a philanthropic ending to all of it. There's definitely an aggression there, a sort of it's coercive, it's corrosive. Excuse me, not coercive. It is corrosive. It is acidic, and it is toxic. And it's affecting, and it is cannibalizing, elements of itself. But I digress. Monologue over, yeah. Please like, share, and subscribe if you dig what I'm doing. like I said, trying to get better every day, trying to take it one day at a time, as I hope you are, and trying to always just get better. Get better, do better, be better. That being said, let's talk about Brian Sicknick. Now I know... Oh, okay, hold on. There we go. All right. So, Brian Sicknick, if you recall, on the 4th... Oh, geez Louise. On the 4th of March... All right. So if you recall, on March the 4th, I believe, I read about the New York Times retraction that needed to be conducted because their anonymous source fucking lied. They said that Brian Sicknick was attacked by insurrectionists during the Capitol Hill riot and was clobbered over the head by a fire extinguisher and died subsequently from his wounds. However, he texted his brother that he was okay. He was not the Capitol Hill police officer that we saw footage of getting hit with a fire extinguisher. Everyone thought that was him. It wasn't him. And he also was alive at the time of the multiple. CNN first was it? Yeah, New York Times first broke it, and it was repeated. It was echoed, parroted by other networks. Okay, and at the time the New York Times wrote it, he was alive, and then he subsequently died later on of a stroke, and they didn't. This retraction, this correction wasn't issued until recently. And January the 8th. So, I mean, wow, we didn't even find out about it until March the 3rd. But, I mean, that's my fault. But, like, again, it's not publicized. Like, his death was publicized and in sort of enshrined. And actually, now that I just looked at it, the update was of March 4th, so that's why it popped up on my feed. So it's not my fault, but he's been emboldened as this figurehead, this representation of what it meant to be a Capitol Hill police officer against the insurrectionists at the riot, and this is what they do. They say they believe in democracy, but they clobber cops and da 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 da. And the dude was alive. He is alive. So, of course, there's multiple articles now talking about this, but recently, I think today, 2 men have been charged with the assault of Brian Sicknick, who died from the Capitol Hill attack. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I thought you just said that he didn't die, like the medical examiner. Even at the time that the medical examiner conducted the autopsy was like, there doesn't seem to be any head trauma, but none of that was reported. But Lloyd, you just said that, they didn't clobber a guy. And it's like, well, no, but he did end up having a stroke. And so they're trying to pin the stroke on them. And there might be some legitimacy here. Let's read. 2 men were arrested and charged with assaulting U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who died following the January 6th riot at Capitol. At least they said died following. And by the way, one of these articles actually talks about the 2 suicides that occurred that had, they actually refer to them as suicides. So at least there's that. But to continue, the 2 men, Julian Catter, 32, Pennsylvania, and George Tanios, 39, of West Virginia, were both arrested Sunday, the Justice Department said. They each face 9 counts related to the attack, including the assault of Sicknick and 2 other federal agents with chemical irritant. The charge, assaulting an officer with a deadly weapon, carries a maximum of 20 years. They'll probably get 10, because if they're going to relate the stroke to them, and I'm not suggesting that they don't get time, but they're going to relate the stroke to them. And even though the medical examiner, let's just read. The Justice Department said Cotter, I think it's Cotter, was arrested as he got off a plane in New Jersey, and Tanios was arrested at his home. It's unclear if the 2 men have attorneys. Ouch. According to an FBI affidavit, investigators identified the 2 men with the help of a tipster who told law enforcement officials that Cotter and Tanios had grown up together in New Jersey. Another tipster identified Tanios to investigators, saying they had been business partners and were in a legal dispute over the tipster's allegation that Tanios had embezzled $435,000 from their former business. Oh, that's what... Oh, come on, bro. Dude, then we read an article about that, about people snitching on people that they dislike. Like, it just happened to intersect that people they detested for personal reasons also were participants or went to the rally of the riot, and so they would snitch. We also read reports of family members. I don't know if the term snitching is appropriate, but they've been reported on. Oh man, as a person who I belongs because of my background, I'm very talkative. I'm very expressive. I'm very open. And had I been like if the tables were turned and I was participating in something, for one of my causes that ended up getting violent, I wonder myself if I would have the discipline to not talk about it beforehand, like to keep communications about it either one to one or just in person in groups, period, or to not talk about it after. Like these humans. The affidavit also detailed aspects of the attack on the Capitol, saying Cotter and Tanios could be seen on footage of the riot working together to assault law enforcement officers with an unknown chemical substance by spraying officers directly in the face and eyes. In one video taken, Cotter allegedly approaches Tanios and says, "Give me the bear shit," before reaching into Tanios' backpack. Hold on, not yet. It's still early," Tanios allegedly responds. Minutes later, according to the affidavit, Cotter approaches a line of police. They called it bear shit because bear spray is serious. But again, I don't know if any of it, causes a stroke. Cotter approaches a line of police holding back rioters on the Capitol's lower west terrace. The court filing says footage from body-worn surveillance cameras shows him spraying Sicknick and two other officers, identified as Edwards and Chapman, in the face with the chemical. All three were incapacitated and unable to perform their duties for at least 20 minutes or longer while they recovered from the spray. Officer Edwards reported lasting injuries underneath her eyes, including scabbing that remained on her face for weeks. Officers Edwards and Chapman also described the spray to their face as a substance as strong as, if not stronger, than any version of pepper spray they had been exposed to during their training as law enforcement. Officer Sicknick reported to his supervisor and colleagues that he had been sprayed in the face with a substance. Sicknick died a day later, and authorities have released little information about the cause of his death, though he has been included as one of the 5 who were killed as a result of the Capitol. And none of that was announced. They were just like, he died. He was assaulted by people. He got bashed in the head by a fire extinguisher and died. And it just made it seem like he got beat to death. Okay. Officials, have disputed early reporting that Sicknick had been killed as a result of blunt force trauma after taking blows to the head by a rider wielding a fire extinguisher, according to the Washington Post. In a statement released on January 7th, Capitol that went completely under the radar and not noticed at all. The Capitol Police said Sicknick had been. Oh, I'm sorry, never mind. No. Yeah. That he'd been injured while physically engaging with protesters and later returned to his division office and collapsed. In another press release issued last month, the department said his death was still being investigated. The medical examiner's report on Sicknick's death, which followed the attack, is not yet complete. This was on February 26th. On January 6th, they were talking about how he died and how horrible this was, and they've used it as a rallying cry. Yet on February 26th, that's what I was saying earlier, I just wanted to read it. As of February 26th, the medical examiner's report hasn't been completed. We are awaiting toxicology results and continue to work with other government agencies regarding the investigation. House Democrats has cited Sicknick's death in their impeachment case against Trump, who they accused of inciting the riot. How does it go? The truth, what is it? A lie makes its way half around the world before the truth even puts his fucking pants on. So, yeah, they just lied, issued a very quiet retraction. And I say lied because CNN's, as we read on the third, CNN source was anonymous. So we'll never know the anonymous person who told them how he died, Sicknick died, why this anonymous source lied, if said anonymous source even exists. So that's fun. And I always want to open up with really the core element of why I'm doing this, because as Chomsky has said, and as his book has said, as the document said, consent is being manufactured because the narrative is being fabricated, right? We can only base our choices, we base our decisions off of our perceptions, which are formed from the information that is given to us. So if the information that's given to us is that Sicknick died from these crazy people beating him in the head to death with a fire extinguisher, how do you think I'm going to think about said people, right? But if I'm never told that in reality there was no beat down, no one was beaten in the face, He was sprayed in the face with a chemical that he may have died from, but as of February 26th, they don't know. But for the last month or plus, they've been suggesting that this happened. And the thing is like using this particular incident as a framework to view everything, because everyone's working from the riot backwards, right? And if you view from the riot backwards, with the figurehead, the flagpole of that, the cherry on top, the bloody cherry, being that 5 people died, when in fact 2 of them were suicides, and one of them didn't even die at the riot, died afterward, died a day later after saying what's up to his brother, and it's alleged just by his family members that he died of a stroke. That's in another article. You're never, like, your perceptual shift never happens. That digestion of information never occurs to give you the appropriate amount of understanding to make a well-informed decision. And that's important. And even though I'm one person and you viewers are 2 and 3 people, multiply that. Just like skimming pennies, right? Multiply that by 1 million people. That's money in the bank. That's a narrative sold and signed, sealed, and delivered. Fact check was Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick killed by rioters. Now this was on February 24th. So I keep saying back, but like it won't. I mean, it was a while ago back then, because at the time that I acquired the articles, this was March the 3rd. So it was merely a week later, and then I took my little hiatus. But yeah. You know, so that happened. But let's move on. Spent enough time on Sicknick. Rest in peace, sir. They're healthy. They're sustainable. So why don't humans eat more bugs? I'm not going to read this. This is just I just want to point this out, as I've been pointing out, right? Since COVID, we've had the World Economic Forum talk about the Great Reset. Oh, everything's going to be rented. We're all going to eat synthetic meat. No one's going to own anything, da-da-da-da-da. And by anything, I mean, okay, so let me rephrase that. Oh, everyone's going to be renting housing for the rest of their life. Everyone's going to eat synthetic meat, and no one's going to own any actual property. The property and housing thing are 2 separate things. You're going to rent everything. That's essentially what it is. There are elements of the Great Reset by the World Economic Forum that I can appreciate. Synthetic meat, I definitely am an advocate for. And here's the thing, I understand that there are micronutrients that I really believe can only be gotten from natural beef. But I mean, we have to be able to balance the effective amount of supplements with the effective amount of risk of continued exhaustive agricultural processes. That being said, perhaps another answer is in automated agriculture. I know, and a lot of farmers are going to friggin' lose out. I'm invested in an agricultural drone tech company, right? The fact remains is that if you can get half the things done that requires a farmer on several rigs, expunging a bunch of CO2 to do, why wouldn't you take that route? Again, I understand that this pushes out farmers, but there has to be a shift. We have to see change somewhere, okay? That sort of rigidity is how you have economic collapse within a country, and really just collapse within a society. So I just wanted to point that out. The Great Reset is coming. They're really trying to push this. The future is now, and it's happening, and it's being shaped and developed right before our very eyes. One of these days, I'm going to have to cover the Great Reset. At least I'd like to. There's a lot of things I've said I'd wanted to cover, but never got around to it. But here we are. Congress passes Biden's COVID bill. I'm sure you've already heard that. I'm sure some of you have already received your stimulus check. Good for you. Congratulations. House voted to approve the bill. It will now go into effect. He signed it early. He was supposed to sign it Friday, signed it Thursday. Yee. It includes a $1,400 check for some Americans, although he did end up eliminating $17 million by lowering the ceilings, creating really rigid ceilings. It is what it is. Because of how the money, I wouldn't say is being shifted. Basically, less people are getting. It's not that more people are getting it. Less people are getting it, but the people that are getting it are getting more of it, right? So that's basically what's happened. And again, that reappropriation isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I would have been more of an advocate because of the way that it's based. It's based off of your 2019. It's based off your 2019 taxes. So who knows what's happened in the last 2 years? But then I think that's why they've also timed it around tax season, Because if you're those of you who did your taxes this year, I believe received your refund earlier. So I think it all is kind of coalescing, for that reason. It's like, all right, well, we can eliminate these people because we're hoping that by the time we get to actually signing it and getting it out there, most people or enough people would have done their taxes to warrant the cutoff that we've designed so that more people can get it who need it. I can kind of see that. Again, I'm an advocate for taxing at the end of the year because those of you who did not receive your checks, then you get a write-off at the end of the year. So it can be taxed at the end of the year. You can cast a wide net and then retroactively fix it. But, it is what it is. We're here. So wanted to identify some interesting statistical analysis. The pace of spending for the pandemic aid is $43,000 every second. This is why the market finds it interesting that you have Janet Yellen and the Fed chairman saying, yeah, inflation, don't worry about it. We're going to keep interest rates low. It's going to be great. And it's like, well, that's great in the short term of allowing recovery to occur because nobody thought that he was going to. But the thing is, when is the shoe going to drop? Are they going to let us catch our breath and because, okay, it's like this. It's like a train, right? You're trying to get up to the speed required to get the train moving into its perpetual motion, right? And it's like, will the Fed allow us not just to get things rolling, but to get it rolling appropriately? It's just like COVID. It's like COVID, right? We're just at the same COVID levels we were back in March, and now Texas wants to open up everything 100%. And it's like, no, dude, that's when you put things on slow. If you're going to open up at all, if you're going to do it at all, you put things real slow and you compound the effect, the positive net effect that you've already gathered. You don't just blow your oh my God, we're here, boom! Come on now, come on. So it's the same thing here. Is the Fed going to let us gain enough momentum in our economy, get things rolling, stop having 700 to 800 to 900,000 jobs, unemployment filed per month? Right? That's still a thing. We still have 700,000 to 900,000 people every month filing for unemployment. All right. So are they going to let the train really get speed rolling, or are they going to pull the rug out from under us just when we get to the speed that we need and haven't been at that speed for long enough? Because it's not just momentum, it's time. We need the time to be at a good enough force, people with jobs, money coming in, economy doing well, so that then, okay, fine, you're going to put up interest rates. All right, we got a little wind in our sail. I think we can take it. Dude, I'm telling you, that's what the market's concerned about. But $43,000 every second creates that level of inflation that people are really concerned about. So let's read the article. To pay out his coronavirus relief package, Joe Biden must spend put some respect on that name. President Joe Biden must spend an average of $3.7 billion every day for the rest of this year. Damn. That's $43,000 every second of every day until midnight chimes on 2022. For the amount of time that readers took to reach this sentence, Biden needs to disperse nearly $800,000 to stay on track. That's according to Congressional Budget Office estimates, and even then, the Biden administration would still have plenty of the $1.9 trillion to spend in later years as a vaccinated country battles back to economic health. The president signed the aid package into law Thursday without a comprehensive plan in place to distribute all of the funds, which would be a core focus of the administration in coming weeks, and was a core complaint, and I think it's a valid complaint. The appropriation of funds has always been a big thing for me in terms of tax principle. I always advocate to look towards the money already being garnered and make sure that that's being appropriated correctly before you think about exorbitantly increasing taxes. And that's across the board. Obviously, taxes on wealthy can always use a nice uptick. But it's like this for me. Yes, we will increase the taxes on the wealthy, but just how much will be determined on how well we can reappropriate the money that we already have. But they definitely gonna have to pay something. And I think that's a reasonable thing. Dude, you can't just take money from people and misspend it and then ask for more money. We know that they're not taking enough from the wealthy, but we also know this government period is rampant for misspending. To continue, the level of spending is a testament to the complexity of addressing a disease that seeped so widely across the Technical difficulties. Yay. All right. So, why vaccine passports could be complicated to pull off in the U.S. I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. Weren't we just talking about Joe Manchin and the $1 trillion stimulus bill? We were, but that got cut off. So, you didn't hear nothing about that. Except for the tax credit for children. They will be doled out in monthly installments by the IRS. Unemployment is going to go $300 through September as opposed to $400 through August, thanks to Joe Manchin, who is the 50th vote and is the Senate representative of West Virginia, the brokest state in the union. That was pretty much the gist of it. It also included a bit of ranting about Joe Manchin and his political maneuvering and his ability to single-handedly hold up both $15 minimum wage, a higher stimulus payment, direct payment, and $400 and higher unemployment. And again, this is all coming from the representative of the poorest state in the union, okay, as far as income per person, right? So then the question bears, how does his representatives feel about that when like 2/3 of them support all of the things that he happens to vote against, or threaten to vote against, I should say? Because the whole thing is threatening to vote against it. Them, media reporting on him threatening to vote against it, but him not really voting against it because there's concessions that are made amongst Democrats, and he gets what he wants, and we only get really the crumbs of what we needed. But other than that, that's pretty much it. So vaccine passports, how do we arrive here? Because it's COVID news time, baby. But this is something that we've talked about before, where there have been calls for pilot programs in Western countries for everything from, the use of RFID to verify vaccination to apps on the phone. But the whole thing is, it's basically a matter of what will reach the mass proliferation point sooner. Because if you have something that probably will be more costly on the individual level, the individual business owner level, something like COVID sticks, which is so Sorrento Therapeutics, this is not a plug, but Sorrento Therapeutics, a company I happen to be invested in, has developed a point-of-care test kit that Hong Kong pilots have been using for flyovers so that they don't have to, because, they don't really have the time because of their scheduling. They don't really have the time to get tested and get the results of those tests in a timely manner. So what they do is this COVID sticks, it works, point of care works in like 10 minutes and they can get results. So it's basically a matter of what will reach proliferation point sooner. Because if you have a test kit that you can test people at the door, yes, logistically that might be costly, but is there the political will for something like a vaccine passport that people have to carry that designates you vaccinated or not? Like, that's really alienating, especially given the percentages of people. It's still something like 30, 40%, I want to say it's something like 43% of people still are weary about taking the vaccine, and I could be wrong about that statistic. That's how statistics are. Something like 80% of statistics are all wrong. So it is what it is. But there's still apprehension, we'll say, about the vaccination, about getting vaccinated in general. Remember, May Day's coming. May time. May. It's something like June, July. Something like May. Yeah, May, June will be the time in which the vaccination will be open to the mass public at large. I believe Biden's already said that he has there's enough shots for every adult, or maybe every citizen, I can't remember, in the United States already. So we're ready for that. But let's read about the vaccination passports. China has it. India, I believe, also has implemented something like this. But while both the European Union and China are committed to moving ahead with vaccine passports, a government-mandated system for citizens to prove they've been inoculated, this could be complicated to carry out in the U.S. because of privacy, equality, and practical concerns. Excuse me. This week, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that the EU would propose a digital green pass for EU citizens. China's government said it intended to develop a certification program for citizens to show proof of vaccination or negative test results. And in February, Israel initiated its green badge system to exclude non-vaccinated individuals from certain activities. Wow. While some experts say there's a chance the U.S. government could pull off a successful and legal certification scheme, data privacy and anti-discrimination hurdles, as well as technical ones, could make a federal vaccine passport system tough to impose. It would be extraordinarily difficult in the U.S., says Georgetown law professor Lawrence Gostin, about adopting a certification system aimed at restraining Americans' liberties absent proof of COVID vaccination. How can we assure this information is held private and won't be given out to police, employees, immigration, or other places? Well, my whole thing is if you have Amazon in the ring working with police departments over minor things like protests, why wouldn't they give this information to police? And like I don't see why it wouldn't be like I know you're thinking HIPAA, but as far as police and immigration, I think a health emergency trounces the privacy laws of HIPAA, right? Just like if you are speaking with a doctor and you present evidence that you have interest in harming yourself or others, they have to violate HIPAA and tell the cops. So, the same thing with like domestic abuse, child abuse, so on and so forth. So under certain circumstances, HIPAA can be voided and is legally doctors are obligated to void it in those cases. So to continue with a vaccine passport system, he added, enormous privileges automatically extend to privileged populations that often have greater access to vaccines, opening the door to potential discrimination claims. We've read about, rich couples flying to remote locations to be vaccinated. We read about that one case where that couple, it was a casino executive and his arm candy girlfriend, who had some sort of arm candy stripper name. I forgot. Anyway, let me not denigrate her. The point is, they flew I think somewhere in Canada, something like that, to like an indigenous town. They pretended to be hospitality, got vaccinated because they were vaccinating employees, and then tried to get away and got caught. And it's just like, oh Lord. Like it really does happen. And it's happened. It's plentiful. Like wealth affords you the arrogance to do stuff like that, and then people are misanthropic enough, and not even misanthropic, because like I said, that couple, they fooled everybody. They went in disguise, but there's definitely money exchanging hands for favors to be executed. We'll put it that way. We know that the medical industry is mainly for profit to begin with. But yeah, vaccine passport. Let's see here. Experts who Yahoo Finance spoke with agree that one of the most robust laws for health information is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, known as HIPAA. This would unlikely come into play under a government-mandated vaccine credentialing program. The reason HIPAA is not relevant is because it applies to doctors, hospitals, health insurers, and basically. And for an employer, the only way to be relevant is if they learned that somebody had tested positive because they submitted an insurance claim to the Employee Health Benefits Program. Yeah, and that's what I was concerned about. But I was talking about doctors, hospitals, health insurers giving up that information to police. They're talking about private employers. And they also don't address the fact that doctors, health insurers, hospitals, and whatnot are bound by HIPAA up until certain circumstances. That's what I mean. It's like they're not kind of explaining this in full here. Technically, there may be no legal barrier preventing federal and local governments from adopting a vaccine passport requirement, says Harvard law professor Glenn Cohen. It's hard to think that it would violate any existing law, he explained. Congress could use its vaccine certification legislation to supersede potentially contravening federal laws, including HIPAA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. Never heard of GINA. As long as Congress was clear enough about it, they could easily wipe away. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want to do. But here's the whole thing. Under a health emergency, you pretty much can get away with anything. Just like in a federal emergency, all Medicare for all can be granted, right? So we definitely are in a situation where, and we're seeing this across the board, from everything from wanting to penalize representatives that wanted to take legal recourse against what they felt were fraudulent election results or a fraudulent election process. To which one should respond like, wait a minute, they did all the legal channels, right? Well, yeah, but then there's no but. But we're seeing the sort of dovetailing of political or personal bias and legal ramifications. We're seeing bias kind of become legal jurisprudence. And now here's the whole thing for me. If we've gotten to March numbers without the mass public being vaccinated, as a macro, what is that suggesting about the ability for society to function without a vaccine? Especially given we're seeing cities and states across the board open up now. Now, again, this is recent, so we still have to let the numbers and the situation develop. I would be interested to see, especially with Texas, how that ends up being in probably by the end of March. But we'll see. My whole thing has been I'm worried more about the response to the virus than the virus itself. Let's see. Biden promises virus war footing to speed shots for all adults. This marked the 1-year anniversary of the start of the pandemic, even though it's really not. It marks the lockdown, but we were talking about COVID back in December. My birthday's on Christmas, and I remember on New Year's thinking to myself, like, wow, this is really freaky. Especially given the reports that were coming out of China about it, but that nothing was really being said in the U.S. But that's fine. We're here. We grow from everything. Let's read briefly. President Joe Biden offered Americans a glimpse of hope that life will return to normal this summer as he marked the 1 year of shutdowns and death. Yada yada. In his first primetime address to the country since his inauguration, which is actually unprecedented in presidential history, the president directed states and also, the president directed states to make all U.S. adults eligible for vaccinations by May 1st and said his administration would reach the goal of 100 million shots in his first 100 days in office by his 60th day as president. We're not only going to meet that goal, we're going to beat that goal. I need you to get vaccinated when it's your turn and you can find an opportunity. He has previously, yada, yada, yada. Some states may already be on track to open eligibility for shots to all adults within weeks, and one, Alaska, already has. Nice. If the nation can reach its vaccination goals, it will be possible for Americans to gather in small groups to celebrate July 4th. They actually were talking about how vaccinated Americans can gather together unmasked and yada, 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 yada. Oh, boy. I'm all right. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just keep it together. Ask your doctor before getting a coronavirus vaccine if you take this common medicine. We already know that the Moderna shot has had adverse reaction with facial fillers, which millions of Americans get every year. We read that on the show. So that's one thing. And then now, what was this? I forgot the medication. Oh, blood thinner medication. If you happen to take blood thinner medication, it will impact the efficacy of the vaccine. It could also increase the likelihood of bruising at the point of injection. Furthermore, you should check with your primary care physician on the off chance you might have skipped your dose of blood thinner medication. Additionally, vaccine providers could opt to inject the shot deeper into the muscle and apply more pressure post-shot in order to reduce the risk of bleeding underneath the skin. Let's see. Hidalgo woman, 75, dies 40 minutes after receiving COVID vaccination. Again, I never point these out to alarm you. I point them out because they should be pointed out. Identifying incidents when they occur and being able to catalog them over a time period is important for anything. It works like anything. Going back to the markets as an example, if the price of a certain security is going to fall below a certain price target, if there's a lot of strength at that price target or not. So you look back, okay, so for the last 6 months, when it hits this number, does it go beneath that number or does it bounce back? This is literally a technical analysis for life. You need to look at life from a macro as well as micro perspective. So in the micro, like this is one incident. This is one incident, one unfortunate incident. because all life matters, and this woman is passed. But this is one incident, right, out of who knows how many countless amounts of, and the statistics out there, I just don't feel like going to get it. But I'm sure hundreds of thousands of people being vaccinated. Except when you zoom out, it's not one incident. We've talked about, I want to estimate probably like 10 incidents of death. There was at one time where that one article they were grouped, so it was like 4 in Sweden and it was like it was like 5 in Sweden and like 4 in Israel, something like that. And then there's been countless AEFIs, adverse effects from immunization. And we've talked about the World Health Organization, how they have an e-learning on it, and you can go and learn about AEFIs, and you find out that the measles vaccine has a 1 in 1 million chance of an AEFI, and the oral polio vaccine that you take has a 2 in 2 million or 1 in 2 million chance of an AEFI adverse reaction occurring. And yet we've seen dozens, we've talked about just alone at least a dozen adverse reactions from both Pfizer and Moderna vaccination. So again, I'm not pointing this out to be an alarmist. If you feel the need to get the vaccine, you weigh the options, you weigh your own risk versus reward, and you go on and you take it or you fucking don't. But you need to do that, again, as I said at the top of the show, perception. We make our decisions based off of the perception that we have, which is developed off of the information that we receive. If you are not receiving all of the information, both good and bad, then your perception is skewed to one way. You're only looking this way. Okay, this is not the whatever that might happen that you are looking for. And that to me is very dangerous. Everyone is different. Everyone's physiology is different. Everyone's chemistry is different. There will be general reactions, and there will be, smaller groups of more adverse reactions. So in order to know if you're in that group of small adverse reactives, you have to fucking know what those small adverse reactives are reacting. Like this is, and so people, they get all bent, oh my God, you're an alarmist, you're pointing, and it's like, no. How would anyone with a facial filler know that they should be concerned about getting the shot and should consult their physician if they are not privy to the information of facial fillers causing the adverse reaction? There is this fear of information that the likes of which only is worsening and is deepening at its core that I've never seen before. It's because it's only gotten worse. That's because the consolidation, the choke points of information and multimedia have only further monopolized, right? And my word, it is just it's honestly exhausting. Simply standing in a corner and talking to like two people, really what amounts to talking to yourself, and then having people come to you and say, well, you shouldn't say those things. Like, first of all, I'm not really saying it to you. First of all, I'm not saying it to you. Second of all, I'm not really saying it to anyone in general. For anyone who's interested in it, they're welcome to stick around and listen and hear. As for anyone else, they're welcome to kick rocks. So what is this apprehension to the simple expression of information and the possibility of people agreeing? Like it's interesting watching cadres of people look at other cadres of people and saying you shouldn't have people agree with you. We don't want people to agree with you, and I don't understand it. I've never understood it. The stymieing of discourse is probably one of the most toxic and poisonous attributes, the most toxic and poisonous attributes of this timeline. I'll just say it. This is a bizarre world. Anyway, CDC says vaccinated people can visit each other mask-free. This is what I was telling you about earlier. Let's get an article I don't have to pay for. Let's see. Some stock stuff. Okay. So, coming up on the bottom of the show, let's see what else. We have some... There's some de Blasio crap because his whole thing is just unraveling. Hey, we actually made it through most of the show today. His whole thing is unraveling. As you can see, a long itinerary as always. But after the COVID stuff, it's mainly the infighting with the Democrats, right? There's a case where progressive Democrats won in Nevada. So the entire staff of the Nevada Democratic Party quit. Yeah, that's where we're at. So you can't turn to Republicans. right? There are elements within the Democratic Party like Joe Manchin who are doing everything they can to undermine progressive policies, populist policies, there's a lot of P's there, right? And then on a state level, when you have, and yes, they are socialist Democrats. Not everything about socialism is bad. I always tell you, follow your own principles and policies, not a political party, politician, or person. Okay? You can be whatever you want to be, dude. You're a Lego piece. You're a puzzle of which pieces can be stop. Okay? So yes, some Democratic socialists won. It was kind of sweeping, but Democratic socialists and progressives won in Nevada. So the entire Nevada Democratic Party staff quit. Wow. Think about that. Think about when populist policies get populist politicians elected, and then the entire state party says, "No, we're done," and they quit. Oh, and it gets better. They gave themselves their own severance pay. They locked down, I think they locked them out of all the social media accounts. They basically scorched earth on their way out because populists won in Nevada. So we'll probably get to that tomorrow. We'll finish up COVID news, but yeah, it's getting real cannibalistic out there for populism, like actual populism. Here's the thing. One man's trash is another man's treasure. So if you're a conservative and you're finding 46% of those surveyed tend to lean towards your conservative policies, right? That can be considered populist. The problem is, and I know that's not a majority, but you understand what I mean. The problem is that if you together collectively, that 46% agree with some heinous shit, does that mean it's still popular? The answer is yes. There was a time in which the majority of this country supported racism, supported Jim Crow. Like, the fact remains, just because nearly half the country supported a monster doesn't mean it wasn't populist. So the sword cuts both ways. In this case, I don't want to use the term actual populist because, again, 46% is almost half, right? That's a minority, but it's a major minority. So the point I'm trying to get to is this. When you now have across the board, Democrat and Republican alike, it's something like 65-70% wanted a reoccurring $2,000 check. Over 70% thought that $1,400 was too little, so on and so forth. When you have across the board statistics like that, that's true populism. That's actual populist, right? And in the scope, in the Overton window of the political spectrum, that's leftist populist, right? That's not conservative populist, neocon, where they want to expand the global war. Like the 2000 was the conservative populism. We gotta go and get them, and don't let them come in here. And we gotta raise the taxes. We gotta lower the taxes on the rich, and then increase capital or decrease capital gains tax. Blah blah. That was conservative populism. We now have leftist populism, where it's like, okay, we need to increase public programs. People need money. People need jobs. I know, right? You're listening to both halves, and you're like, how in the hell? Okay, but that was the world. That was America post 9/11. Right after 9/11, we just wanted to kick ass. We just wanted to burn shit down. Whatever. You wanted to Enron, the Enron pyramid. Fuck, who cares? Fucking, what is it? No Child Left Behind failing. Nobody, who cares? Bush can't form a sentence. We got a bumbling idiot for a president. Who cares? Let's kill them all. Like, they got away with murder using nationalist fervor as a mask, as a smokescreen. And they got away with a lot of stuff. The cherry on top of which is the Patriot Act. But that's the gimmick of conservative populism. Now we have, I don't know I guess socialist populism, I guess. Democratic populism, Republic populism, whatever. And it's cutting across bipartisan lines. Because everyone understands poverty. Everyone understands what having a disease that kills family members and friends and prevents you from living your life is like. And so you're seeing, you have this situation where there is a unified enemy again, just like post 9/11. And when there's a unified enemy, it's always easy to sway motivations, to sway opinion, to manufacture consent. This is why information is so important. And I mean, we saw how, the war in Iraq and the war in the Middle East is gone via WMDs. Yay. But CDC says, and we're going to wrap it up on COVID. CDC says vaccinated people can visit each other mask-free. Vaccinated people can visit indoors without masks, but must still wear them in public and avoid large gatherings when around those who aren't immunized or at high risk for contracting COVID. I don't understand. Are they suggesting that even though you're vaccinated, you can still be a carrier? That's not how that works. That's not how that works. If you're vaccinated from the disease can't exist in your body. As far as I mean, I'm not an epidemiologist or a virologist, so I'm not sure how that works. Let's read. The agency issued its long-awaited guidelines for what fully vaccinated people can do safely as inoculations rise, but health experts warn that the risk of the virus remains, especially with new variants. Broadly, the CDC recommended that fully vaccinated people can meet freely in private settings with other fully vaccinated people, but that several restrictions remain, including advising against travel and recommending mask wearing in public. Okay. Wait a minute. Pause. Full stop. If you can't get on a plane without a negative test, why wouldn't vaccinated people be able to travel on a plane without a mask? This is starting to... I don't know. Let's just keep reading. 2 weeks after people receive their final vaccine dose of the 2-dose Moderna Pfizer vaccines or their 1 dose of the J&J vaccine, they're considered fully immunized and can meet indoors with other fully vaccinated people without wearing masks or social distancing. Such gatherings are low risk. Those vaccinated can also meet with people who aren't vaccinated from a single household who are at low risk without wearing masks or distancing, such as a vaccinated grandparents meeting their unvaccinated adult child, that child's children, providing they're healthy and not at high risk. However, the CDC estimated that just 10% of the population has been fully vaccinated so far and recommends that those who are continue to take steps to curb the spread, particularly as more contagious variants emerge, and caveat, you might need to get more shots. We believe these new recommendations, blah, 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 blah. In public, fully vaccinated people should wear masks and socially distance in public if they're visiting with unvaccinated people from more than one household or when around unvaccinated people who are high risk, such as older people, the CDC said. Most fully vaccinated people don't need to quarantine and test for COVID-19 if exposed to a case and are asymptomatic. What? I thought being asymptomatic doesn't necessarily mean that you don't. Okay, but it's most vaccinated people. Okay. See, the nitpicking, all the nitpicking and exceptions. There are some exceptions, always exceptions, such as residents of congregate settings like group homes. I was thinking about that because my mom's in a group home. Everyone, regardless of vaccination, should avoid medium or large gatherings, the CDC said. If they choose to attend anyhow, vaccinated people should wear a mask because they can still relay the virus to those who haven't been immunized. How can you, if that's a possibility at all, then you should just always wear your mask, even if you're vaccinated. I'll have to look further into that. The CDC recommendations didn't include any changes to travel. CDC urges people to delay travel. COVID cases and deaths are declining across the country, and more than 9 million people have been vaccinated. In the past week, an average of 2.16 million doses a day were administered to Americans. The White House said that all American adults will be able to get the vaccine by the end of May. I don't know who Walensky is. Last week, Walensky warned of a 4th wave of COVID infections without continued vigilance, of course. President Joe Biden echoed her statement by urging all Americans, the health czar, to keep washing their hands, keep washing your hands, keep washing your hands. All right. Companies are boosting wages to bring workers back in the COVID-19 recovery. Yeah. So that's about it for the show. The tragedy of Woody Harrelson just got sadder and sadder. I don't even, whatever. He's Carnage, so he'll be good. But, there's just a lot going on. So as the week continues, I will harp and pull at certain strings. I definitely want to better understand the guidelines by the CDC because I feel like some of it is just kind of flaky. And again, I want further discernment, further analysis. But yeah, man, please like, share, and subscribe if you dig what I'm doing. I'm trying to get better all the time. And I hope you are too. Please be well to yourself and to each other. Take care.